Good afternoon. Welcome to the JB Show. My name is James Fauntleroy. I am your host today, and I have a wonderfully special guest for all of you today, my friend Margo Lee. Margo, good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you too, James.
Yeah, we're actually having this discussion, as you guys know, about urban and rural leftists and the unification between us. I just wanted to give a hello to everybody that's in the chat. Margo, sometimes you're in the chat, so now you're
Usually.
on screen, so it's great. Also, thanks to James Robert Coyle for the correction. On my title, I had to change it up just a little bit just to make sure I was grammatically correct. So thank you very much for that. Um, Emily J says such an interesting discussion area. I'm very curious to hear how you all notice about the lack of quality healthcare access in the inner city residents as much as it does rural. We can get into that conversation as well. I actually think that's a good question.
That's an
Uh
excellent question.
yeah. Let me see.
It's my
And
husband.
nice to meet you, man. Can't wait for this one. It's gonna be a good show. Oh yeah, it's gonna be great. Yeah. Um, hey, Human Left Solidarity. Good to see you. Um, Malik, CBC, Daryl Nelson. Uh, wait, is that? No. Okay, I'm thinking you're somebody else. Sorry, I'm sorry. Nice to meet you. I'm not sure if I've seen you around here or any at all, but nice to have you, Eric. Good to see you. Nice to have you as well. Uh, Emoji. I don't know. Let me see. I don't know exactly what that says, but thank you so much for joining us. And okay, so I know, I'm nutty, but okay, um, but yeah. So if you can if you can let people know kind of what your background is and why, as to the basis for what we're discussing, so just so that they can get a little synopsis of where you're coming from. If you can just explain that for the audience a little bit.
Well, sure. So I'm coming to you right now from Central Maine, but I am not originally from Central Maine. I'm actually from New York, and
Hmm.
I've lived all over the country. I've lived in California. I lived in
Hmm.
Arizona. I've lived in
Hmm.
Texas twice, Houston and Austin. And I went to school in Boston, where I met my husband, had my kids, and now we're in Central Maine.
Hmm.
So, the reason why we're having this conversation is because you and I had a very short exchange about rural living
Hmm.
that I run into quite a bit when I'm online with people, and that sort of is like you made a well-intentioned comment about mass transit. I
Hmm.
throw out something kind of generic about, how can we use public transportation out here? 300 pounds of chicken food. It's a lot to try and get on a bus. My driveway alone is 100 feet long. Not sure how I would manage that. And you and I were respectful to each other, but I don't know if you remember, there was someone else in there who told me that there aren't enough of us to matter. Our needs are too obscure, and I hear that a lot. So I guess I finally got frustrated enough to we need to have this conversation. There's a lot of misunderstandings
Yeah.
about who we are out here, what we need, what we value, and how we can work together. How like our relationship would be stronger, our movement would be stronger if we actually understood each other better.
Yeah. This is more of a stream for us to get to know what each group needs and what we need to know about each group in order to express more solidarity than what we do now. I think this is going to be a very important discussion to have. And to anybody who's watching right now, if you guys can share this on social media, especially with people in different leftists, especially with and a lot of us know leftists that live in urban areas. We need to show this so that we have more of a knowledge of what our leftist siblings in rural areas, what their concerns and their needs are, and how we are very similar. And likewise, if you know of any leftists that live in rural areas, please share this with them so that they know that we, as at least me as an urban leftist, which work actively trying to understand and express solidarity with our brothers and sisters in the rural areas as well.
Right.
That's basically what I want to convey to the audience. If you guys can share that, please make sure to do that.
Right. And rural areas around the country are going to be all different. So when I'm talking about my experience and whom I'm surrounded by, what we value, what we find important and stuff, and how we function, I'm really
Mm-hmm.
speaking about New England,
Mm-hmm.
the New England area. I'm
Mm-hmm.
sure a lot of it's going to be the same. There's going to be overlap in other areas, but just for clarification's sake, I can't speak for all rural areas,
Of course.
just my area.
Yeah. Yeah. Of course. So let me ask you this: what do you think is one of the biggest um, misconceptions about leftists in rural areas that you see most common?
I would probably say that the biggest misconception is that there aren't any leftists out here.
Interesting. Very interesting. Because I do know of some on the left who live in rural areas and they are involved in being on farms and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always think it's the coolest thing to see, actually. If you'll indulge me for a minute, but I've met some who are deeply into horticulture and farming, and they'll raise chickens and pigs and different types of animals and livestock. And they also are reading theory, and they also believe all the same things that many of us on the left believe. And I think is one of the coolest things. And so the fact that some don't think that they exist, or they have like this notion that, oh, they just aren't around. It's kind of weird. It's almost as if they automatically think that you're a right winger if
Mm-hmm.
you're out, you know, in that area.
We get lumped in with the MAGAs mostly. And which is also another misconception about the people that live out here. It's not everyone who lives out here is flag waving, Capitol storming MAGA.
Mm-hmm.
Some of them, and you may be surprised to hear, are just our regular Republicans. Actually, were torn in 2016 in between voting for Trump and Bernie, which is a point I
Wow.
brought up at our caucus repeatedly because we're used to put. Do we caucus now for pride? They changed the law about that, but they kept saying, but Trump, and I said, you don't understand. If you're not talking to your Republican neighbors, then you don't know that they're actually torn between Bernie and Trump because they both represent, so out of the mainstream candidates. And you'll remember Trump actually ran a more progressive campaign than he, ruled
Yeah.
as the ruler,
Yeah.
and so it was actually pretty close. And I mean, and I kept saying to these shit libs, excuse me, that if you take Bernie off the table, Trump's all that's left. And that's what happened.
Hmm. And if my memory do serves me correctly, Trump did run to the left of Hillary Clinton.
Yes.
So I mean, if that's the case, if they're choosing Trump based on him running to the left of Hillary Clinton, it kind of makes you think, you know, if you talk about the actual issue for issue, then leftist issues win
Mm-hmm.
every single time. And so that's very interesting though, about how there was like a divide in their mind, like Bernie or Trump. And the thing is that choice was taken away, so they kind of felt like, well, I guess it's Trump then.
Yeah.
It's kind of wild when you think about it that way.
Yep. And then, of course, some of them, are probably became disenchanted with Trump as he ran his presidency. But then some of them, of course, ran off. They're like, they have their guy, and they sort of became the MAGAs. But if you look at the county that I live in, and Maine is okay. So let me back up a little. So Maine is one of two states that splits its electoral college votes. Nebraska is the other one. And so we have two congressional districts. We have CD1, which is down south, which is like our Portland area. It's definitely sort of more urban and liberal leaning. And then, but it's this tiny little portion of the state. And then CD2 is basically a swing state. So during the last election, when I would talk about sort of who I was voting for, that I was voting green, I would always have to say I'm voting green in CD2, because that means I'm voting green in the swing state, basically. And in the county that I live in, the majority of the people are registered voters, but they're not affiliated with any party at all. I mean, New England's an interesting place. If you remember, it was the birthplace of America. We've got a lot of people who are, it's funny. We have a tendency to elect Republican leaders while we all sort of lean sort of left. It's a very interesting sort of area.
Yeah, that's interesting as well. There's this huge amount of people that we've noticed that are independent now. They're not in either party. I am now registered independent because I did vote Democrat in my in the last gubernatorial race here in Florida. But that was when I first got into electoral politics at all. And then last year, after Bernie lost, I was like, okay, I'm voting green, getting out of the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
So I've only been in the Democratic Party for about a year before I left it. So I was just like,
that was a quick turnaround.
Y'all motherfuckers are crazy. I'm out. And so I left. And so after Bernie dropped out, I was just like, well, I'm not voting for a racist warmonger. I'm not voting for either one of them. So I'm going to vote green. And so that's what I did. And I was voting primarily for Angela Walker than anything else, because Angela Walker was fire. So then that was that. And of course, I got the whole, if you're voting green, then you're voting for the Republican, blah, 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 BS. But, I find it interesting that, and it's actually quite sobering, not sobering. It's comforting to know that there's a lot of overlap between what we think and what a lot of people who aren't as deeply into politics as we are think. And ultimately it just comes down to just the basic necessities that we all need. I mean, is there really that much difference between us? That's a good, that's the question that needs to be asked.
It's what you have to remember is that it's not just us who are suffering. It's not like, capitalism has been designed to make leftists suffer. It's designed to make everyone suffer. Yeah. And so my Republican neighbors are suffering, they're food insecure, they're hungry, they're homeless, there's domestic violence. We have a huge opioid problem in our area. We have a huge poverty problem. 68% of the student body in the district here is on free and reduced lunch. Everyone is, and so the thing to remember, I think, when I have a background in counseling also. So like I I can talk to my Republican neighbors. I can stay neutral. I don't flip out when they say really whack shit, which they do. You got to sort of stand in the middle and so you talk to them. And remember that the right is equally as propagandized as the left. The
Mhm.
difference is they're propagandized to believe that their problems are our fault, while the
Mhm.
shit libs all believe that their problems are because of the Republicans.
Mhm.
When really, the right and left out here, we're all suffering the same.
Yeah, we are. That's actually a really good point. And I've said this many times before. If you're truly on the left, that means you're a person that loves humanity. That's not just the people who agree with you.
Right.
Um, and we got to, and you brought up a really good point. We got to remember that people on the right, the people who listen to a Marjorie Taylor Greene or Ben Shapiro, they are heavily propagandized. And I hope I don't get canceled for this, but I say you should love your Republican neighbors too. You don't have to agree with them,
Right.
but you love them in so much that you want them to have health care, good food, clean water. You want them to have freedom of movement. You want them to be able to own the means of production in their workplace. You want all that for them, even though you still don't agree with their beliefs.
Right.
And I think that we have to keep that in scope because people in rural areas are still people. Um, and I want to kind of shift it back to the leftists in these areas. Even though we may disagree with people who are right wing in rural areas, that still doesn't mean that we don't want them to have the best that a society can offer. But what more is it when we downplay or overlook our leftist siblings in these areas and say that they just don't exist? That's that to me is just like, come on, you got to do better.
Yeah. We're out here. I mean, we're outnumbered, but there's the interesting thing about like small town living. You talk about your neighbors.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so before, as I was preparing for the stream, I'd asked some of my friends around here, my lefties, what
Mm-hmm.
do you wish our city cousins, sort of knew about us? And one of them had said, we come out here to be self-sufficient. And what
Mm-hmm.
you learn is that there is no self-sufficient. It's you
Oh.
have to depend on your neighbors.
Oh.
Living out
Hmm.
here is very hard. So I asked my husband this morning, I said, what would you like people to know? And he said, it's commitment to live out here. It's hard.
Hmm.
You can't be lazy. You can't put things off. You have to do, because we farm too. So, you have to do what you have to do when it needs to get done, not when you feel like it, not when you have the time, and without your neighbors, you
Mm-hmm.
die, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just, I mean, so I tell people this too, because the other part is a lot of leftists talk about coming out here. So we've been out here, my family and I, for the last 7 years. And so
Mm-hmm.
when people talk about coming out, and we came out here to grow our own food, that was our intention. And they want to do that too. And I think that's fantastic. We
Mm-hmm.
need more people to come out and do that. But what I say is definitely make sure that you are connected to somebody who knows what they're doing.
Yeah.
And I often get a lot of pushback for that too, because I get told that I don't trust in these younger people who are coming up, and I'm like, no, I just don't want you to die, and I suggest you get a mentor.
Yeah. It sounds like there there has to be a clinging to cooperation and collaboration for the means of survival.
Yes.
Now, where did we learn that from? Who also displays those values? Oh yeah, all of you that are watching, people on the
Mm-hmm.
left. So yeah, I mean, and let me ask you this: does that kind of build a little bit of more of a familiarity so that you can help teach your neighbors who may be right wing about leftist values? Does that also help in that as well?
Sure.
Okay.
Oop, you cut out for a second there.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah. So, because it seems like you have to behave as a neighbor in order to survive, and in that, and correct me if if I take a misstep here. If you're speaking to them, let's say about um you know feeding your livestock, or you know preparing for the new harvest, um or even working with them, that gives you an opportunity to, number one, show ways that you're similar, but two, you're also teaching them that, yeah, no, you're being propagandized about certain things that just aren't true.
Mm-hmm.
And that gives you an opportunity to speak with them, because just like Nick always says, I talk to everybody. He said, this is what he says: I talk to everybody because I live around a bunch of right wingers, and so who do
Yes.
I have to talk to? I have
Right.
to talk to them. And the goal of us on the left is to present the idea and the policies, and to move people to the left. Where can we move people to the left but from the right? You
Right.
can't. You can't go anywhere else. I can't, because just preaching to the choir is great and all, but it gets to a point where nothing else grows. And so, ha- has that been your experience in living in, a rural area in that space, if you don't mind my asking?
No, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I mean, farming communities and small communities like this one, there's a story. I'm going to get it kind of wrong, but it's about like this farmer who always grows award-winning corn every year,
Mm-hmm.
and every year he gives seed to his neighbors.
Oh.
And someone was like, "Why would you give away your award-winning corn when you could keep that to yourself, and like make all the money yourself?" And
Mm-hmm.
he said, "The wind blows the pollen from my neighbor's fields onto my fields. If my
Mm-hmm.
neighbor has inferior corn, I have inferior corn. So it's
God.
imperative that your neighbors do well.
Mm.
We all need to take care. If my neighbors can't get the hay in, we're all the animals are going to die. Or if we don't get the hay cut, it brings in predators and parasites and things that we don't want. We all, and you can't avoid your red neighbors. That it's everybody. It's more like I'm like your friendly neighborhood communist, and they just sort of put up with me, and but I'm pretty cool about talking to them about stuff. And I actually have really good, productive conversations with them, because I address them with not talking points, but policy points. When I talk to, the liberals, the blues, they're all just about having a moral high ground. And there sort of isn't any moving them to the left because they think they're already there.
That's a solid point there. They think they're already there when it comes to moral high ground.
Yeah.
And they get mad because we show them you got some moving to do.
Yep.
And then that kind of makes them think, well, obviously you're just blind because I'm already here at the mountaintop. And it's just like, nah, you're only up by 20 feet. This mountain is 36,000 feet high.
Yeah.
You got some more moving to do. And so that's interesting. But then at the same time, you said policy points. And when you talk about certain leftist policy, I mean, yeah, there'll be some pushback, but once you debunk all that, if they are honest actors, then they'll be like, well, damn, I think you got a point there. And it kind of moves them a little bit. And I think it's kind of like chipping away, you know, like scientists will say, and one more thing, just to harp on this point, um, there are scientists all over rural areas, because if there wasn't, then they wouldn't have farms. By the way, just to let you know that. So
Yes,
people who
farming
think,
actually involves a lot of science.
yeah, so I just want to put that out there. A lot of people don't really necessarily think about it that way, but it's very scientific out there. So, by the way, but where was I going with this? Oh shit, I just lost my thought. But anyways, yeah. So I think that um talking to them about the policies and issue for issue, when you put up the logical points, it helps out so much. And I think we need to look at our rural brothers and sisters in a way as a deeply necessary resource to kind of spread the message throughout rural communities, so that uh, it helps us out in that area while we can still focus on the urban areas as well.
It's interesting. I was in a space with, I don't know if she's in the chat, with Quaker Socialist, not that long ago, talking about taking back our power around healthcare. And
Mm-hmm.
I was talking about, it's funny that someone had brought, that was the first thing someone brought up,
Mm-hmm.
about how devoid of healthcare we are out here. And so we were thinking about, I've been meditating on, how can we use what we've got here to
Mm-hmm.
create an environment where we could do something like that. And I actually think that our small community may be better set up to have community-based healthcare that way,
Mm.
more so than the city, because like I said, first of all, we have limited resources. There's the doctor
Mm-hmm.
in town. You know what I mean? We don't even have a dentist. We haven't been able to have a dentist for years.
Oh no.
My kids haven't seen a pediatrician since they've been here. They see just the nurse, which is okay, but healthcare out here is totally, we're vacant out
Yeah.
here, but everyone
Yeah.
needs healthcare. Healthcare is actually, interestingly enough, is one of the things that you can get almost. There's so many ways to talk to your Republican neighbors about, to weasel in there and show them that something like Medicare for all, just universal healthcare, actually,
Mm-hmm.
would really benefit everybody. And I thought, that it was just an interesting conversation about, everyone thinks about doing things in the city because there are more people. And I thought, we're actually a good starting point out here because we're so community based already. So.
Yeah, that is a good um that's a good analysis. One of the things that I was thinking about was the conversation that we had on Twitter with that person. I don't even remember who they are, but there's this air of just pushing off people who live in those communities like they don't matter. And yet you're sitting there eating your broccoli, eating your strawberries, eating, your cornflakes.
Yep.
I mean, where did you get that? That corn you're still picking from your teeth? Where did you get that from?
Mm-hmm.
It's just like we gotta, you know, we gotta have care for our rural communities as well, because I like to call the rural communities as the pantry for the country.
Yes.
If you ain't got that pantry, you're gonna starve.
Yeah.
And so why aren't we, I think there needs to be more of respect. And I think those of us on the left are still propagandized to a point where we'll look at people who aren't in urban areas as either less than or non-existent.
Yep.
And I think that's something that we have to kind of get ourselves out of our brain. I know I do. Full disclosure, I have to get that out of my head too. And so I think that's a bit of a societal prejudice that some of us do have that we need to work on. And when I say we, I include myself in these conversations too, because we have to be honest with ourselves. And, because typically when I think of rule, I think right wing, white,
Mm-hmm.
and ultra conservative. Whereas in some of these rural areas, you have black, left, and sometimes LGBTQ. I mean, look at friends of the show Kennedy Cooper. They're you know, um, you know, queer and a farmer in rural America got makeup on and baling hay.
Yep.
And I'm just like, yes, do that thing. But the thing is that that's not something that we usually think about. And we usually we usually put them in a specific box. We black people don't like to be painted with a broad brush. And I think it's important that we all stop painting with broad brushes for people who may live in certain areas and start seeing them for who they are, having discussions with them, and seeing where they are. And if they may have some flaws in their logic, maybe it be the human thing to help them to work through that so they can come to a more rational conclusion.
Right, because you have to remember that they're also propagandized.
Yes.
So they will say whack shit. I assure you, they will say the whack shit. And the thing is, it is very white out here. It's so stupid. It's like the one thing we didn't look into when we were looking for a place to move. Because we're white, I guess that's our privilege. We just move about wherever we want. And what we didn't realize is we were moving from Dorchester, Boston, to the whitest place sort of ever. And so you have to keep that in mind too when I talk to my neighbors and they say things like, oh, I hope, I don't know if I'm going to watch football this year because, if anyone kneels, it's like, and they say, well, Black Lives Matter. And you got to be like, has the man ever met a black person? I mean, it's entirely likely that they either have never met one or they definitely don't know anybody. Right.
Introduce them to me. No,
it's maybe in passing, it's like
Yeah.
You've seen a person of color.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not like we don't have anybody of color out here, but it's few and far between. And you just have to sort of keep in mind like where these people are coming from. In a conversation where my friend, who's a Republican, said that something about healthcare, it was the illegals in the emergency rooms. And I said, well, I wouldn't say it's I said, well, here's what you do. Because the thing is maybe there are a lot of illegals in the emergency room, but that's because they don't even have to be illegals, but because without health insurance, where else do you go?
Yeah.
You go to the hospital. Public hospitals have to serve you. So if you don't have a primary care physician because you don't have health insurance, where do you go?
Yeah.
Go to the hospital.
Yeah. Yeah.
And they're just watching their little brains like blow up behind. They're like, it's just like, I'm sorry that you were stupid enough to like blame the illegals, but that's what you were told. Let me suggest something else. Maybe if they had health insurance, they'd go see a doctor.
You know what? If this was a show and if I was in the background watching you explain that to that person and their mind was blown, I would put in the background a song and it would be, did not blow your mind this time. Did not. And then you see their eyes light up like, whoa. People actually go to the hospital because they go to the ER because they don't have health care. It's like, yeah. That's why. And let me put it to you this way. If I was moving to a country where I was so desperate to come here, I would be willing to go past the laws just to get out of the country that I was in, because it was so messed up. And then I got sick in this country. You're damn right I'm going to go to the hospital, because where am I going to go?
Right.
You know, I'm not just going to come here to die. I came here to live, you know?
Right.
So, I mean, if I wanted to die, I would have stayed in my own country.
Right.
And, you know, mind you, what they don't know is that a lot of what's going on in their country is the fault of the United States because of imperialism. But it's a whole nother story.
Right.
You know,
we'll get really there. We'll get there with them.
It's actually our government's fault as to why they're so desperate to come here that they're willing to, like, bypass whatever laws. And the thing is that a lot of them are actually, refugees. So truth be told, they actually are asylum seekers. So they actually do have a legal right to be here. But that's a completely other conversation. But yeah, I think, that's, you just displayed right there one of the reasons why it is good to have leftists in rural areas to explain things. And I think that's part of the value that we see. And ultimately, it's just seeing you value as a human being. I mean, really.
I don't want to be told, that my needs are obscure and there aren't enough of us to matter.
Yeah. Yeah. Like that guy was like, oh, well, because you made some great points, because of course I want to see mass transit free at the point of service across this nation, of course. But at the same time, what good is that going to do for, our fellow citizens in rural areas?
Right.
It's not really going to do that much good. But I would love to see someone who has the type of brain that can think of a way that would definitely help people in rural areas in that regard, that would be beneficial to them,
Yeah.
So I haven't got an idea yet, but if I do, I'll make sure to run it past, my friends that live in rural areas to see about, what do you think about this? Is this a great idea? Would this be a great policy? And if it is, great, then I can voice it. And if not, I'll just go back to the drawing board,
Yeah. Well, I assure you that the mileage tax ain't it.
Oh gosh, Peter Paul Montgomery. He just that's, by the way, that's his full name, right? Peter Paul Montgomery Buttigieg. Peter Paul Montgomery Buttigieg. If that doesn't sound like a really rich trust fund baby, I don't know what does.
It's like the whitest name I've ever heard.
Paul Montgomery. Montgomery. The last Montgomery I heard of was Burns. Montgomery Burns. Excellent. That's the last one. And now this guy wants to put a gas tax on all Americans? That sounds some like Montgomery Burns type shit.
I mean, I have to drive 40 miles to and from work every day. It's 40 miles just to go to work and come home. And if my husband has to take if my husband has to take the car, he drops us off, drives home, does his thing, drives back, picks us up, goes home. That's 80 miles for the day.
God. Look.
But, mass transit out here, we wish we could. I mean, I wish there were, I don't know. I'm 4 miles off the main road. My commute to work involves a dirt road. I'm not sure how we would do mass transit. I don't know. If you can come up with some sort of solution, I'd be open to it.
Side question. What about fully electric powered, like, trucks? Would that, like, okay, so let's say hypothetically we get let's say we get a president, Sabby Sabs, hypothetically speaking. Sabby, I'm sorry, but you're president. Okay, So she's
I'm
like,
sorry.
okay, so this is what I want to do. We're going to do a massive uh, electric grid infrastructure, would also include putting power stations for electric vehicles in rural areas throughout, right? And they put them all underground. I don't know if that's going to work. Somebody's going to debunk this in like 2 ways to Sunday, but it's whatever. But they decide to do something like that where it's safe for the environment or whatever. And they start doing a mass building of electric trucks. They give subsidies to anybody who lives in those areas to get it, either at deep discount or for free. And then they are able to have those trucks to use in rural areas. Would that be something that would be kind of cool?
Two things. One, we lose our electricity out here pretty frequently
Oh,
because of storms.
see, I told you.
Which I mean, like our house. I mean, if you want to talk about the climate emergency, wind is most definitely part of that. Most
Oh,
people don't
yeah.
think about that very much.
Yeah.
But the last few years have been incredibly windy. The trees are all down. I mean, we started quarantine. My son turned 12, his birthday on Easter Sunday, in a blackout in quarantine.
Oh,
And we
no.
lose our power for like 4 days at a time. I mean, for us, it's just another Tuesday. We're just like, whatever. We have wood stoves and we have oil lamps. We're all like Little House on the Prairie. We have the pitcher pump, so you can wash your dishes and stuff. But
Okay.
so one is the availability of electricity may be a problem, maybe. And the other thing is out here, the thing about new cars, I'm certified auto body repair. I've lived like 1,000 lifetimes, I know. And I used to build and race hot rods when I was living in California. That's what I did.
Oh my God, you are awesome. Okay, keep going.
And the thing is, and I know that a lot of our rural friends would support this, and that the older vehicles that are heavy duty sort of steel, simple engines, we work our machines really, really hard, and they have to be able to withstand that and also be repairable. And in my experience, a lot of new cars are like delicate. There lots of plastic bits. They're sort of made to plastic out here is no good. It gets too cold. It's going to break anyway. But it seems like I don't know. The feeling is like a new car on that dirt road. Oh no, I'm not going mudding down there. Sort of. It's I don't trust it. Maybe if I saw them working better, I would be like, okay, I'll give it a try. But there's something out here, it has to be durable. And I don't know how durable those cars are.
Well, I think part of it also has to do with planned obsolescence because they make things to break down more easier.
Yes.
So I mean, if we can get rid of that and they built stuff to truly last, I mean, that would be awesome. But I mean, yeah, I wish I can come up with an idea that was more sustainable. But in the meantime, I mean, if we could at least get it in urban areas where you have a huge population of people, that'd be great. But you know, but yeah, I was going back to that conversation particularly because that person kind of had like this kind of throwaway attitude of people, who are in rural areas, and I just really think that um that that person has this propagandized view, and it's not necessarily all everybody's fault, our his fault, or my fault. A lot of times we're given views of certain people in certain areas, and it's always this one frame. Like for instance, people who live in Africa, in different African countries, is always displayed as this primitive, type of area where people still live in mud huts, and and it's all just brown and super hot, and they don't ever show the big metropolitan cities, in different African countries. They don't show the beautiful lush green forests in Africa.
Yep.
They don't show
Or
the
the
snow.
cities.
Yeah, the cities,
Cities.
the snowy high elevations. They don't show these things because then that means that you realize that they're more like us than we realize.
Mm-hmm.
And there seems to be this divide, especially within media, to divide all of us who are in different areas so that we don't display solidarity and we don't come together.
Right. And the thing is too is I don't I don't blame you. Like I don't blame my urban brothers and sisters for sort of not knowing what it's like out here.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what it was like out here either. I had some sort of idea of what was, but like I said, we've been here 7 years. I mean, God, it's terrifying. You show up and you don't know how to do anything. You don't know I don't blame people for not knowing. The blame it lands on them when I try to enlighten them. I try to shed some light on what where they may be mistaken, and then I'm told I'm obscure and I'm a nobody. And that actually is kind of like the standard response. They will say it in 100 different ways, but it all comes down to the fact that there aren't enough of us and nobody cares.
Doesn't that hurt?
Yeah. It makes me furious. You know what the feeling is? It feels like you're a kid standing in, the kitchen with your parents, and your parents are telling their friends a story about you, but they've got all the details wrong, and you're trying to get their attention to be like, that's not how it happened, or that's not, what it is. And they just keep talking and they just sort of ignore you. And you're like, it's constantly being just silenced. And it's like, I'd like to educate you. I mean, because if we're going to make this work, if this revolution is going to happen, you need us and we need you.
Yeah. Yeah. Patrick Leslie said, yes, it's deeply isolating. That's got to be tough. Oh my gosh.
Well, because there aren't that many of us out here necessarily. I mean, I've got a handful of lefties. For Bernie in 2016, we had a pretty good group. In fact, two of them actually went on to run for office. But I don't think either one of them won. But it's even worse to kind of get on Twitter, where my people are supposed to be, and then be snubbed by them too.
Yeah, yeah. That's one of the reasons why I'm glad we're having this conversation, because in order for us to truly be able to unite, there has to be a solidarity. And we talk about building coalitions between Black, white, Hispanic, Asian. So we talk about racial coalitions. We talk about class solidarity. But what about community solidarity between different types of communities, where you have the rural community and the urban community expressing solidarity and being able to work towards a more better future? I think that's something that we need to work on. Dare I say it's more of an immediate concern, because if we don't have you guys out there, how in the hell? And if we're talking about revolution, how are we going to do it without y'all?
Yeah.
I mean, you're pretty important. I would say.
Well, we grow your food. That was one of the things that I had mentioned when we had talked first, where I said, the urban left, they spend all this money. They go to Whole Foods. They're making, the right choice, they think, buying organic vegetables. And it's like, who do you think grew that? I grew that. or I work for the guy who grew it, or I had tea with his wife, but they snub us. We're growing your food. We're literally growing your food, all the good stuff, and your medicine too. Not for nothing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Alexandra, what the fuck is urban and rural left? I do not accept these labels. Okay, so here's the thing. Urban leftists tend to be people who are on the left that live in larger cities and towns. Rural leftists tend to be people who are on the left that live in more rural towns and smaller areas. So that is the difference. Urban leftists tend to have a lot more. I don't know. I don't want to ruin it by saying more amenities. They don't have to travel as far for the things that they need. Um, they get all their food at markets, particularly supermarkets and things like that.
Yep.
Um, they don't have to worry about their power going out as often.
Yeah.
And, their access to water isn't through a pump, it's through a faucet.
Right.
So, um, yeah, that's the difference. And there is, and here's the thing, these are unfortunately labels that we have to use in order to differentiate between groups. This is a classification between groups. Uh, but at the same time, there needs to be um, there needs to be a coming together between both groups, because ultimately our goals are largely the same. And I see that you said I understand the concept. I just don't like the labels. Unfortunately, that's the classification of what it is.
I mean, what else should we? I mean, maybe they've got a better idea of sort of what we. I mean, should
Yeah.
call ourselves. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, if you have something great better, then that'd be great. But as far as the labeling semantics argument, I mean, ultimately, it's just what we're talking about is just more of a coming together between groups who live out in more of the countryside versus more of the city side.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much what it is. Uh, that's pretty much the goal of this conversation. But if you have a better suggestion, then that'd be great. Maybe we can flesh that out a little bit too.
Yeah. I'm not
Uh,
offended. I mean, call us something else. I don't know. I don't know what else
yeah,
to call us.
yeah. Um, this is interesting. Justin Johnson says some in the city think they can grow crops via vertical farming, yet vertical farming only works for leafy greens, not crops producing fruitful bodies, as they are too heavy. I mean, yeah, look, like I said, they grow our food, you
I
know.
wouldn't grow anything that was grown vertically. Not for okay. So as a farmer, I know that this is the big thing. I see this a lot where with the vertical farming and the hydroponics and sort of stuff like that. And I mean, if you really want nutrients in your food, it's got to be outside. It's got to get the rain on it. The rain has nutrients in it. The sun has nutrients in it. The soil has nutrients in it. And you can kind of mimic that inside, but it is definitely not your very best bet.
Yeah. I mean,
that's just my opinion. You can eat whatever you want, but
yeah. I mean, look, it's the earth,
yeah.
We come from it and we gotta partake, from it. It's all one big cycle. Uh, I rather get mine, like I kind of like it when I get my mushrooms and I still see soil on them and I have to
Mhm.
wash it off. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is from the earth, this is from the dirt, but I can put it in my body and it actually is good for me. Cool.
Yep.
And so that's what I like as well. But yeah, and even when we talk about revolution, where can we go if we need to for safe havens? You know, I mean, who can we talk to and to teach us about how to grow food and what are some of the best ways to keep livestock, how best, and I mean, we could probably go on Google, but just reading or watching a video versus hands-on with a, let's say, a few of us go out to Margo's farm, during a revolution and we want to learn how to do certain things. Well, she's going to get our hands in the dirt
Mhm.
and teach us how to do it in real time, you
Yes.
know?
All visitors to the farm get put to work.
Yeah.
Friends
So,
and family, all.
yeah. But at the same time, it's part of learning how to be good stewards of, the planet that we live on. And I mean, I I don't know, maybe I don't think I'm stretching too far as to saying that those of us on the left, we also dare care really deeply about how the earth works. And, speaking to our fellow leftists that live in rural areas, they know a little bit more about how to keep things sustainable and what's
Mhm.
good for, because I know you guys aren't running to Monsanto to, for your crops to get grown. You guys are doing it all, trying to do it as much as the natural way as possible.
Yep. The next thing we're actually going to get into is seed saving.
Oh,
Seed saving. So
isn't that
I don't.
still?
What? Well, so real quick. So we had a farm mentor originally when we first
Mm-hmm,
started up here, and his name is Will Bonsall. And
mm-hmm.
he wrote. Oh, maybe my husband will remember if he's in the chat. There's he wrote a book about like revolutionary organic gardening or radical organic gardening and stuff. He is the granddaddy of seed saving, and rural leftists, or actually, you know what, just rural people in general are
Mm-hmm.
intimately familiar with the climate emergency and what devastation is coming.
Hmm.
I mean, we're
Interesting.
on the forefront of the climate emergency and big agriculture, what needs to change and sort of stuff like that. And Will Bonsall is a great guy to read up on if you're interested in any of that.
Hmm. James asked a good question. He said, Margo, where do you get your seeds? Can you talk to Bill Gates, Cargill, or Monsanto? um, James, I'm a level with you, bro. Uh, Bill Gates, Cargill, and Monsanto. I hope you're being sarcastic with that one, because they ain't trying to hear what Margo's trying to say. Because they are pure for profit, and they don't give a shit if it ruins the planet or not. And they don't give a shit if it makes people, subject to capitalism. And if they die, then they die, whatever. That's how people like them feel. They're not trying to hear what Margo says. Margo, please, if you will.
Well, right. So that's sort of the other thing is you have to learn where your seeds come from, and not only where they come from, but where they came from before that, because a lot of that Monsanto stuff is buried deep within the sort of production of seeds. So we actually get our seeds from a place called Fedco Seeds, which is it's a workers' co-op. And they do a lot of research around. Yep, you can you can be a member if you shop there a lot, and and so they do a lot of research about where the seeds come from and where they came from before that and where they came from before that.
Oh, I wonder if you can find out like the produce that a farm produces from those seeds. Like, do they advertise it, and if you can buy the produce from them? I wonder. That'd be really cool, because you know how I feel about worker co-ops.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty awesome. I would love to like go to like a farm, and they go, we only sell food that's seeds from Fedco. And then you go in, and then you pick that produce, and then
Yep, that'd be cool.
you're paying for the farm that used the Fedco seeds, which means that they also pay Fedco, which is a worker co-op, for their seeds, which is completely natural, versus the dirty, disgusting Monsanto doesn't get used. And so then we support that like financial ecosystem more and more. Oh, that'd be so awesome.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that would be really, really cool. So you guys use that. Do you guys sell to the public at all?
So originally, our mission statement was to come up here and to grow organic produce and sell it to our communities at reasonable prices.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, if you've ever been poor, which we most definitely are,
Yeah.
that that good quality food costs more. Fresh produce costs more than canned produce, and so that was sort of our original goal. And we did used to go to the farmers market, but there wasn't. I don't know. There was a lot of stuff at the market that just was. And then our kids started playing football, so we can't go to the market anymore.
Gotcha.
Sorry, football takes precedent. But we had sometimes we'll put a thing at the end of our driveway, and of course, so now we grow for ourselves and for our friends. So we have a friends and family garden, which is, I mean, 100, 200-foot beds of carrots and stuff. It's not like a garden. It's what would be called a market garden, which means you're growing to go to the market, but it's still a garden. And you can come over and just take the stuff.
Wow. Wow. Hey, this is also a kind of an off question, but do you do like, I guess, different heirloom vegetables? Because, okay, so one thing I learned was that not all carrots are orange.
No.
Surprise!
In fact, I think they used to not be orange, and orange was the new thing.
Yeah.
I think they used to come in multiple colors, and then, I mean, we always like to grow I like them. They don't taste as good, although we have the sweetest carrots. I used to use them to bribe middle schoolers to do their assignments. They're that sweet.
Wow, that's
Yeah.
pretty cool. Oh, imagine the carrot cakes you can make with that.
Mm-hmm. I'm quite a cook too, you know.
We can collaborate in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Oh, sucky now. Okay, all right. I'm coming over to Margo's house. I'm gonna bring my spatula.
Party at my house.
Party at your house. We're getting up in the kitchen for the holidays, and you're gonna be what's that in the air? And I'd be like, we're roasting portobello mushrooms right now.
You're gonna make me hungry.
Or we can put them out on the grill over wood burning grill.
Oh, well, my neighbor has a wood burning oven for making bread, and every Friday I get a fresh loaf of bread.
See, this is why we need to embrace our leftists in rural areas, so we can get the bread, people.
Yes,
I do it just for the bread. Bread and roses, people.
Right, and I just give them a dozen of my pasture-raised eggs. We do a lot of bartering out here, actually, which is something.
Really?
I do hear that that came up a bunch on some of the spaces I was in a bunch of weeks ago. And so we grow, so we grow our own vegetables, and then our big bumper crop is garlic, because organic garlic you cannot find anywhere. And so, get this. So last year we grew 3/4, I think it was 3/4 of an acre. I don't, if my husband's still in the chat, he'll correct me. It wasn't a whole acre, I don't think. We grow 2 different kinds of garlic, and it's 3/4 of an acre. And we've been building that up. So we bartered for 20 pounds of garlic seed, which is valued at about $200, with eggs. We just constantly gave eggs until we had enough, and then they gave us 20 pounds. And so you plant it, you harvest it, you replant it, you harvest it, you replant it, you harvest it. And now, over the years, now we have only the best garlic strains that grow on our property. And I mean, the seed itself is worth probably about $10,000, 3/4 of an acre, just to get in there. And that was just with eggs. And I just keep my chickens because I like them. You can barter for all sorts of stuff. You give eggs, you get fresh milk straight out of the cow. I mean, that carrot cake is being made with fresh butter from the cow, eggs from the chickens, carrots from the field.
Okay. So now what I'm thinking is, so I'm going to go to Margo's. We're going to go get that fresh baked bread, that butter that's fresh, that was churned from the cows.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to use that. And then we're going to get that amazing organic garlic, make a garlic paste, mix it with that butter, a few fresh herbs, some salt and pepper, toast it in the oven. Yeah. Oh my Lord.
Yeah, it's one of the things about living out here is it gets you really in touch with quality over quantity. One of the things that when I had asked online, what would people want to know about us that live out here, someone had said, make sure that they understand sort of like what we value versus what you guys may value. And it's interesting because we don't value things that are fancy,
Mm-hmm.
things that are big. We value quality. We value function. It
Mm-hmm.
doesn't have to be pretty, but it's got to work.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of times you'll find, I mean, you can live in a trailer. Lots of us live in trailers.
Mm-hmm.
And it doesn't matter because but you'll see a tiny little hut next to a big garage filled with all the toys we like, the ATVs and the snow machines and sort of all that. The things that we value are very different from what I would have valued when I lived in the city. In the city, I cared a lot about what I looked like. I cared a lot about what other people thought I looked like. I cared about getting places quickly, not being bothered by people. I'm trying to think, being on the subway in New York is like, headphones, don't talk to me. And out here, I mean, it's just the total opposite.
So, if you could, so first of all, from what I gather is the outside is your playground.
Mm-hmm.
You know, because when I was a little kid growing up, yes, I'm older than I look, people. When I was a little kid, the outside was my playground. Like me and my brother, we would go out, and we wouldn't come back till dinner time. This was before cell phones and all that.
Mm-hmm.
Mom would be in the house, doing something, whatever. And next thing you know, we would go outside, play. If we were thirsty, we go to the garden hose, grab a garden hose, and get a drink of water out of there. And then by the time we got home, we were starving, we were hungry, and we had dinner.
Yep.
And you mentioned the things that you value. Can you give one or two examples of that? Because I know you said functionality and quality over quantity. If you can give us kind of one good example of that, just to help us understand a little bit better.
Well, one of those examples is sort of like your living space, is because you live out here. It's one of the most beautiful places, ever. And
Mm-hmm.
you're right. So you're here because you're outside most of the time.
Mm-hmm.
So you'll have, tiny little houses with lots of, big family living in it. And no one would look at you sideways for living in, some dumpy trailer because you've got the best woods for cross country skiing or hunting. They do a lot of that here.
Mm-hmm.
The thing too is like right, I said with the truck, we need things. It doesn't need to be pretty. It needs to work. It needs to be it needs to function. It needs to be fixable when I need it to be fixable. I think one of the other misconceptions is that like farmers are stupid. That
Mm.
farming's really easy, and I remember over the summer I had said to some friends, this is what people think. What they don't know is that farming is everything's broken. You've got to fix it, and you figure some way to make it work. You're constantly thinking on your feet because things need to work. I mean, our machinery always is breaking down. We do most of our stuff by hand on our property, actually. And we still
Wow.
run into that problem with our machinery breaking down.
Wow. Yeah. I think that's also a misconception that we need to get out of our heads, that the we seem to have this. Well, I don't necessarily think that we on the left, but I think society in general seems to have this thought that farmers are not as intelligent as we think they aren't. Okay, so there's misconceptions. Like when we think about farmers, we think about them in certain demographics. They
Mm-hmm.
typically are always men.
Mm-hmm.
They typically are always white, and they typically are right wing. Um, you are a woman that is from the city
Mm-hmm.
that is also farming, and at first glance, it's like she has an accent. She's from New York. She doesn't know a thing about farming. But here you are, a farmer,
Rocking
you
it.
know, rocking it, you know, and you know, and it takes a deep amount of knowledge. You have to know about environmental science. You have to know a lot about biology, you know, in order to know how these things operate and work. And there's a lot to be gleaned from your knowledge of these things so that we're able to live a more better life. And sometimes living a better life means living a more simpler life. I
Hmm.
think that's something that we also have to learn.
Well, it's
You
like I
know,
always said, there's is a serious, serious learning curve to coming out here. This when I hear the discourse online about purchasing land and starting communes and stuff, and I think that's fantastic. We need more of that because we can only grow so much, on our property. But if you have the next property over, and actually one of the things we're doing, so we don't have communes as much as we have communities, meaning like we just took a couple under our wings to teach them how to mentor them and how to grow their own food and grow their own medicine, how to can things. You have to join forces with people. And because there's such a really steep learning curve just from reading the skies for the weather, uh, in general, also for the property that you're living on, because it's different. I mean, we live in like a microclimate because we're next to we call it a river, but it's really a stream, and we're sort of in between two. We're in a valley. We call it the Swamp of Sorrows, and from World of Warcraft, and so it's like my neighbor has a different weather, climate than I do. And
wow.
so there's just this really steep learning curve. There's a lot of stuff. And the other thing you have to know how to do is you have to learn how to cut hair. This is what you don't think about when you move out to the middle of nowhere. My poor children, my poor husband, they have to put up with my homestead haircuts.
Yeah, because I mean, it takes a lot just to travel to a city to go get your hair cut. Oh Lord, I don't know.
Well, I mean,
I,
and if
I,
you're going to tax me by the mile, then I'm not driving to no Walmart to get my haircut.
oh, I don't know if CJ be able to deal with that because he keeps his waves tight. No, I think CJ can deal, and I think his waves will stay tight even if he lived in the country. But mine, not so much. I'll have a hard time just doing it, and I live in an urban area, so
Right?
I got to get my hair cut anyway. But yeah, that's also really cool. That's also really interesting as well. What was one of the biggest learning curves for you when you moved out into the country?
Uh, I think the biggest lesson really was that things need to be done when they need to be done. Meaning you can't put things off. We're incredibly weather dependent, especially so coming into the winter time. I mean, if you look around now, it looks like we're all getting ready for the apocalypse because everyone's putting their snow. You got to put reflectors out for your plow guys because we'll get 4 feet of snow hopefully. If we don't, then we're in big trouble again. So that they could plow it all up, and they cut the trees down on the side of the road to make room for more snow. And it's about just not putting things off. Things need to be fixed when they're fixed. And I don't know if I'm putting it right. It's, when the wind comes and it rips, the top off your woodshed, it doesn't matter what weather is out there. You have to go save it. So it's not for the faint of heart living out
Yeah.
here. That was very much it because everything else sort of comes. I remember being on someone else's farm. We were doing a farm tour about weeding,
Mm-hmm.
how to take care of weeds and stuff. And I remember thinking, man, I can't wait to someday be at the place where I can experiment with things on my farm, like using capture crops and stuff to capture the bad bugs and to encourage good bugs. And because we're all organic, so we don't like to spray stuff. So I don't know. The learning curve is steep, real steep.
Wow, that's pretty wild. I
Everything is a learning curve, has a learning curve to it.
Yeah. Oh, just want to say, uh, hey to Sabby. Sabby, I made you president of the United States in one of my scenarios. I do apologize. I know you do not want to be around those people, but for the sake of argument, I just threw your name out there. I apologize. I hope you still come on my show during the week of Christmas. If not, I'm so sorry.
Right. She'd probably get more delegates
She's like,
than
JB,
Kamala.
you made me president of the United States.
Kingmaker.
Yeah. I now pronounce you POTUS. But yeah. God, I'm so goofy. But yeah, you this is how primitive my mind is when it comes to things like this. You said that we may get 4 feet of snow, hopefully.
Mm-hmm.
In the city, we're like, no, we don't want that. In the country, you're like, yes, we want that. And I think now, let my brain just work for a second. I think it's because snow equals water. So you need that water to melt into the ground so that when it comes time for your crops, as well as more groundwater, then that's what you need. If
That's
it
right.
doesn't snow enough, then that means you're lacking water.
Yes.
Correct?
Yes.
Okay.
Absolutely. Also, the snow has a lot of nitrogen in it from the atmosphere. There's a saying called "snow is the poor man's fertilizer." Is the poor man's fertilizer. And so, for example,
Really?
this last winter we're supposed to get about 4 feet of snow.
Mm-hmm.
We probably got less than 2. Most of it was icy, and what ended up happening is that our crops all end up being, late because there's the snow melting, especially for our garlic, is the first taste of moisture and nutrients for anything that's in the ground to grow. So if there's no snow to melt in there with nutrients and moisture, your seeds don't get started. They just won't start to grow until you get enough rain. The problem is that Maine has been in a drought for the last 5 years.
Oh.
So there wasn't any rain to be had. I mean, we lost most of our vegetables this year. And it's happened the last 2 or 3 years. The climate emergency is really, I wrote an op-ed for CJ's website like a million years ago about the climate emergency and how people don't think about things like wind and the lack of snow, because people are like, good, no snow, and it's like, no, that's actually a problem, a real problem.
Yeah. Because snow is just cold rain. That's basically all it really is. It's just frozen rain.
Mm-hmm.
And without rain, you don't, you don't have, water in sufficient water in the areas that you need it to be.
Right.
That's a good lesson, though. I didn't realize that the part about nitrogen in snow, that it goes as one of the nutrients for your plants, especially plants that grow in the ground, your root vegetables.
Mm-hmm.
But what did I tell y'all? I learn stuff every single time, whether it's in the chat, whether it's with a guest. I learn stuff, and you guys are literally like watching me in class right now, and this is like amazing. This is some good shit, Margo.
I'm glad you like it. I was afraid I was going to be boring.
No, you are not boring at all. In fact, I would like to have you back on again in the near future, because I would like to talk more about things like this, because I think we need to have these lessons, and we don't just have to talk about, coming into solidarity with, the urban left and the rural left and blah, blah, blah. But we can also talk about, farming tips and things like that, and how to grow food. And those of us who live in what we like to call food jungles in urban areas, what we can do to help feed ourselves a little bit healthier and a little bit better, so that we can save a little bit money, so we won't end up buying, the plants and vegetables that are grown by Monsanto that are sold in our supermarkets.
Right.
Because if I knew of a farmer's market, well, if I can travel to a farmer's market, and as well as if I can afford to go to a farmer's market,
right.
I live in Orlando, so it's whatever. But if I could just go there and purchase all my vegetables and fruits from there and know that their seeds are from Fedco, from a place like where you go,
Mhm.
then hell yeah, I'm buying from them. I started drinking more ocean spray because I heard that the farmers were co-op. So
Yeah.
so I was just like, hey, cranberry juice for me, baby.
That's well,
So
and it's like, well, we say that, the best thing to do is you have to know your farmer. I mean, and farmers markets are fantastic for stuff like that, because I think that's how we got started too. When we were living in Austin, and they had a great farmers market, and we would go and ask them, and you ask the dairy farmers, "Are you organic?" And they'll explain to you why they're not. And actually, what's really funny is that we used to call ourselves organic, and we don't call ourselves really organic anymore, because so much of what the National Organic Program allows for goes against our mission statement. So our mission statement is about being self-sufficient and sustainable, and they're just like this organic thing. And so when we would go into farmers or a bit into our ag circles, with our aggie friends, and say something about like, oh, well, we don't use that and we don't do that, they call us radicals and purists. So we changed it was Hearthstone Organic Farm, and now it's just Hearthstone Farm, and it says radically grown vegetables since 2014.
oh, I like y'all. I like y'all. Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
Even the organic community is like, y'all too radical for me.
Yeah.
I just, and it's just like, well, no, we're growing our shit natural.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
I love it. I love it. Oh my god, your produce is probably delicious as hell.
Oh, it's amazing. I used to use vegetables to bribe my students. Middle schoolers eating carrots. Come on.
Right? Like I'm not a big carrot eater. I'm gonna be real, you know.
You'd eat these.
But oh my gosh.
The broccoli too, because we're in the valley, so we do a lot of all the cold weather stuff, the things that need to get well. Because if you don't know, broccoli, when it gets like frost, makes it super sweet, super super sweet.
Are
So
you
our
kidding
broccoli
me?
is some of the best
Wait,
broccoli ever.
hold up. I did not know. Number one, I didn't know broccoli can be sweet.
Oh
Okay, I
yeah.
did not know
Mm.
that. You guys got me doing the JB lean right now on broccoli. And number two, I love broccoli. I started liking broccoli when I was about 11 or 12. And if you get some broccoli and you steam it really good, and then you add a little bit of olive oil and salt, pepper, and a little bit of garlic, oh
Mm-hmm.
my God, it is delicious. I even put raw broccoli in my salads.
Yeah, my kids just
Real
eat
talk.
it like off the stalk, just
Oh my,
like that.
oh, and Nick said you were the goat.
Thank you.
And Nick would know because he's a goat too.
Well, he is. I go to Nick for all my international politics. He's my international policy guy.
Oh, by the way, watch International Leftist Coalition on here on Revolutionary Blackout. You guys will you'll thank me later. If you guys watch it with Nick and Josana. By the way, watch that. And Sabby said broccoli's my jam. Pump the jam, pump it up while your feet are stumping. Sorry. I'm so silly. We went from talking about politics to broccoli. Lord and Lord.
Well, broccoli is politics, though. When you talk about hungry people in our community, so
That's true. And let me say this. I think it's wild that you have children that are food insecure in these rural and farming communities because they just don't make enough to feed them properly in these areas. It's capitalism really does a number on everyone, doesn't it?
yeah,
Like if in any community you would think of, children who live in farming communities should be the last people should be going hungry.
right.
And yet we're at this level right now. It's just it seems wild to me. Like, no, all these companies right now, I want them gone.
Yeah, that and the thing is a lot of the just the food waste is just from
Oh
the farms
yeah.
is pretty amazing. Just because sort of like the things that are allowable in a grocery store. So like a
Yeah.
friend of ours grows for yes, water is politics for sure.
Yeah.
A friend of ours grows for Whole Foods, or I think he used to. He doesn't anymore, but he grows beets. Okay. And I wanted some beets. And so I went to work on his farm for a couple of hours. And he said, you can take all the beets you can carry. So I took 300 pounds or something of beets that are, have tiny little marks in them or are too small or sort of anything like that. I took them home. I gave a bunch to a friend. They made wine out of them. They were delicious.
Hold,
Delicious.
wait a minute. Hold the phone.
You're
Okay,
making me feel guilty.
back up the truck. Beet wine?
Oh, yeah. Oh, so good.
What?
Right? Y'all make fun of us, but I think we're living the good life out here.
Beet wine.
Ah, so good. Earthy but sweet, really nice.
I'm coming over to Margo's house. Margo's husband, get a room ready.
Right?
Homie, we gonna live it up.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have some beet wine at Margo's house. We're gonna have some garlic bread from the farm.
Yep.
And y'all gonna and I'm gonna get out on one of them ATVs.
Yeah. That's right.
For those of you in the urban community, that stands for all-terrain vehicle. Uh my God. I did not know that you can make wine from beets.
Oh,
like
you can make wine out of anything. Anything.
Wow, that's true.
I gave my friend some sweet pumpkins too one year because I wanted them because I don't know how to make wine. So I don't know how to make wine yet. So I'd given them a bunch of sweet like pie pumpkins, but it didn't work. It turned into vinegar, she said.
Oh.
But I thought that was going to be delicious.
But that's crazy. That's some good shit.
Well, and it's like not for nothing, but like we're talking about the revolution, and we're talking the revolution is going to be messy, and a lot of our systems are going to fall apart, and our city cousins are going to need a lot of stuff that we already have. So, which was, I think that was actually the other op-ed I wrote for CJ was about the distribution problems that were happening early on in the quarantine. Yeah. And I said, well, our communities actually do this really well. For us, quarantine, our lives didn't change very much, because we grow our own food and we make our own wine and,
Wow.
So we talk about, the revolution and, and one of the things that came up, by the way, I loved the General Strike Summit.
Oh, thank you.
Oh yeah. The General Strike Summit was amazing.
Thank you so much.
I loved particularly that the disability community got their own platform. And one of the things that, because people sort of are like, well, what am I going to do? For the revolution, I'm disabled. Or they'll say, I want to be on a commune, but I'm not physically that strong or sort of whatever. And so what I keep saying is, look, everyone has a role to play in the revolution. And it doesn't matter if you're, if you use a wheelchair, if you're deaf, if you're blind, if your energy is low, you know what I mean? Like there's something for everyone. There's so much to do. And, and it's the same for us out here, in the rural areas where there's something for everyone to do. You can be in a wheelchair and make wine. For me, there's a role for everybody.
I would make wine for you and your husband, Marcia. Rest assured, and you guys will better have them adoption papers ready because I'm about to be your sibling, and you'd be like, Brian, James, come move in with us.
Well, remember, we put you to work on the farm. Friends and family, everyone who steps foot on the farm gets in the field and goes to work. No one stays for free.
I'll cuddle a chicken. I don't care.
I love my chicken.
Yeah, I'll be like, hey, you want to make some eggs for us, please? I'll even sing to you. It's not good, but I'll sing to you.
Yeah, they don't like
Yeah.
being cuddled, but I do force them to let me do that sometimes.
You know what? It was kind of endearing that you called me your city cousin. That was pretty endearing. I'm just gonna put that out there. I'm your city cousin. That's all. That's great. I'm a hold on to that one.
It always reminds me of sort of like the city mouse and the country mouse. I can't remember the name of that book. I don't know. I think you're old enough to have probably read it. I think it's this country mouse and the city mouse or something. And I think the city mouse comes to visit the country mouse, and it's all very weird. And then they flip, and then the country mouse goes to the city, and it's all like, you live like this.
Yeah, yeah, that's pretty awesome. But yeah, you were talking about how broccoli is politics, water is politics,
Very much so.
clean air is politics. And I tried to explain this to my brother once because he was basically saying, I just want to live a life without all this drama. And I said, ultimately, the life that you live, politics is involved in every single thing that you do.
Mm-hmm.
What your kids get taught in school, the water that you drink, the codes that are written for the building that you live in. Everything involves politics because that is the system which society uses in order for people to live. And as we try to affect it either through direct action, which is our preferred means, also direct action could also mean, farming for your own food so you can be off the system a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to, we talk about direct action and mutual aid also goes both ways with, our rural, family as well, because we can provide things that they may not have as easy access to, but also there's some things that they can provide that we don't have as easy access to as well.
Yeah.
And it's not always, like I said, always say, it's not always monetary. Sometimes it may be, we're hungry, we ain't got no food, but we got a fellow rural leftist out there that got some potatoes that's growing on his crops that
Yep.
he can give us. Looks like we have some scalloped potatoes and some potato chips.
Yep.
You
Yep.
know,
And like I said, we barter sort of like a lot. And one of the things that I really like about the barter system out here is that we all get to decide, like, no one gets the short end of the stick because
Mhm.
everyone decides what their product or their need is valued at. Meaning, I mean, if I grow 200 linear feet of, or more than that, of carrots,
Mhm.
then carrots to me are not super valuable. I've got a lot of them. What I
Mhm.
want are the plums from your tree, but you've got lots of plums. So to you, they sort of don't mean anything. You understand what I mean? So like, this is how much plums, I'll give you the carrots that to the value of the
Mhm.
plums for me. And
Yeah.
so everyone leaves happy sort of in the barter system because like I said, the things that we value are different, and we get to set our own value on our carrots and our plums and our fresh bread from the oven and the eggs from the chickens and sort of things like that. We paid for our dog with carrots. I shit you not. I think it was a lot. They love our carrots. So I think it was like 300 pounds of carrots actually. But like I said, we
I
have a
love
lot of
this.
carrots.
I love
So,
this. I just this is just great. You got a doggo.
mhm,
Yes, I'm using the phrase doggo from the internet, and I don't care who knows
that's
it.
okay.
You guys got a cute doggo
Yep.
for
His name's Samwise, of course. Frodo's the other one.
for
Bunch
car-
of nerds.
for carrots.
Yeah.
That's pretty awesome. You know what? I probably would have named him Doc from What's Up, Doc.
I should have named him Carrot or something. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah, that probably would have been kind of cool. But yeah, oh, by the way, I'm sorry to say this, but anytime you make a Lord of the Rings reference, I really don't know because I've never read the books or watched the movies.
They're the main characters.
I know, and people are probably gonna be like, "You call yourself a nerd, a geek, and you've never seen Lord of the Rings?" No, I never seen Lord of the Rings, and I do plan on one day, but just not right now. Okay.
What's your big nerd out then? How are you a nerd? What's your nerd out?
Uh,
I know I just totally changed the subject.
okay,
I want to know.
so you know what I watch a lot of?
Hmm.
I watch a lot of like the Marvel movies and stuff like that.
Hmm.
I know it's owned by Disney, and there's no ethical consumption in capitalism anyway. So get off your high horse.
Right.
So, but I do like the Marvel like superheroes and stuff like that. I do
That's
a lot
cool.
of that. That's what I'm particularly into. I think it kind of started with like shows and video games when I was in my earlier years. That was pretty cool. Um, and by the way, they're actually bringing back one of the shows that I used to watch in the 90s when I was a kid, and they're making brand new episodes about it too.
Which one?
X-Men, the animated series.
Oh,
Oh, they're bringing that back. They're going to bring out brand new episodes, and they're trying to bring back like all the original like voice cast and stuff. Oh my god! I lost it. I went bananas. Look, I was like Howard Dean when he went, yo! I was like that, okay? That's how, like, I was out there. But, yeah, that's what I'm excited for. So, if you know me, and all the Marvel shows that have came up this year, I've watched all of them and stuff. So, yeah, that's kind of my, like, nerd out. And so... yeah, I actually want to talk. I actually want to do kind of a bit of a show. Once I expand to Twitch,
mm-hmm.
I want to start a show where we talk video games and we kind of mix politics with that. One of the first ones I want to do is I want to talk about the politics of Final Fantasy VII. That is one of the that's pretty much my favorite game of all time. And it is quite interesting because it is about a company that is owned by the government, which is pulling out resources for the planet to extract it, for money, power, and control. And it produces the electricity for the entire city. And they use various methods of imperialism throughout their world in that game, and you have to fight against, and you're part of kind of a radical eco-terrorist group called Avalanche. It's just
eco-terrorism. Excellent.
Yes, that game. Oh my! It came out in '97 on PlayStation, and they made a remake of it over a year ago, and now it came out on PlayStation 4.
Yeah, sounds familiar, but I'm not that much into video games. I have one video game. It's called Buster Brothers, and it probably came out in like the late 80s. Because I'm PlayStation 1. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, Nick. Yeah, yeah. I still got my Marvel vs. Capcom 2 on my Street Fighter Alpha 3. Okay. Holla at your boy. But yeah, I mean, I'm really just, vibing with you because I think we kind of nailed down the point about leftists in both spaces about how much we need each other.
Yeah.
And I think that was a great conversation, and I really appreciate. But now I'm vibing with you right now because I just don't want to let you go yet.
Okay.
Sorry, Margo's husband. I need to finish out this hour to have this conversation because I want to walk the walk and talk as I talk the talk, and talk about how we unify with other leftists. You have to build community with them. I'm building community with you right now.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do. But yeah, there's a lot of stories, not just in video games, and also in movies and books and TV, where they actually kind of lean towards leftist values, but it's usually always for entertainment purposes. And like one of the things that I think about is like Star Wars.
Mhm.
Everybody roots for the revolutionary.
Right.
Everybody roots for them. But then once you try to be revolutionary in real life, oh no, you guys are terrorists. You guys are bad. You guys are too radical. And it's like, wait a minute. You guys were rooting for the rebellion and Luke Skywalker in them, in the movie because they were under a tyrannical government. And yet you guys see what's going on in the United States right now, and you guys aren't rooting for us?
Nope, they're propagandized. You got to remember, they think it's our fault. I said this in 2016 too, where I said, if they could just fucking recognize that we're all being, it's all the same. We're fighting the same enemy, and we're not fighting each other. It's the fucking government that's making it like that. If we could just get past the teams, and it's because they don't recognize that the government is the enemy. They have been propagandized to believe that it's us. So when we go out there and we're Black Lives Matter and we're Antifa, they're told that we're the bad guys, and they believe it.
Yeah. And a lot of times they just continue to keep watching the propaganda. I think part of it is because it's a bit of an echo chamber. And so because of that, they, it's almost like they feel like, oh, this is a friend that's telling me all these things that I need to know about these people. But they haven't talked to these people.
Right.
They don't know what we really think. And we'll try to talk to them, and it's like once you get past that barrier, then you start to break down certain inaccurate beliefs. Like I was speaking with an older gentleman. He's a fellow dialysis patient, and he is an older Black gentleman, but he's very right wing, right? When Donald Trump was president, he was like, that's my president. And he was talking about like the Democrats, and I was basically like, yeah, fuck the Democrats. And he was like, what, you don't like them either? I'm like, no. He's like, but aren't you a socialist? I'm like, yeah, we don't like them. And it's just like, dude, and he'll be like, well, Donald Trump said this, and if it's something that's correct, I'll be like, well, yeah, Donald Trump is right on that.
I agree. I agree with some of this. I mean, I was protesting the TPP from years before the election happened, and Trump got us out of it was the Trans-Pacific Partnership.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I mean, I was living in Boston, so I was out in the streets protesting against it before Trump even got into office. He got us out of the TPP, and I like that.
Yeah.
That's the thing is, I mean, I can name the things that I like that Trump did. I mean, they're really few and far between, but like I'll admit when he does something that I agreed with.
Yeah. I mean, look, a broken clock is right twice a day.
Right.
So sometimes we have to admit when even people who we massively disagree with, if they get something right, okay, they're right about it.
Yeah.
And the thing is I would make certain points, about things like when you started off about healthcare, that's what I would start off with, and I would say things about healthcare, and he would be like, "Oh well, damn, you had a point there," and
yes.
I wouldn't maneuver past the whole moral high ground that a lot of liberals try to hold. And it's like you have the ultra right conservatives that, especially the evangelicals, that try to take the moral high ground, and then you have the liberals that try to take the moral high ground, and it's like they're butting heads, and then we on the actual left are over here like, yeah, both of y'all are wrong.
Well, it's my experience seems to be, like the red team, they will talk about policy. They'll have it wrong. They'll do it with talking points about policy, but the Democrats, you can't even talk policy with them because but Trump. You know, they're
Yeah.
not Team
Yeah.
Trump, so they're the good guys. Even though, you know, these people are like, well, if you're not vaccinated, you should go to the end of the line for healthcare. It's like, whoa, I thought we were the guys that were supposed to care about our neighbors. Why are you saying that?
Yeah, it's true. It's
You know,
true.
vaccinated or unvaccinated, let's all try to get through this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You didn't even
There's
ask why they're not vaccinated. You're just assuming that they're, you know, falling for that misinformation or whatever. You don't even know what's going on. You've just morally judged an entire group of people. And it's been pointed out numerous times that the community that is unvaccinated the most often are urban people of color. And it's because
that's
they
true.
have their own, and it's not because they're like, you know, anti-vax. They're just like push that shit on me. You know, that's
Yeah.
happened to my community before, and I'm not falling for that shit again.
Yeah. Um they're I like to say jab because of the algorithm, but they are jab hesitant
Yeah.
because of the history that we as Black people have dealt with and mandates for us to put something in our body that hasn't went through a long form of actual testing.
Oops.
Uh-oh.
Sorry. I
Oh,
don't
it's
know why
okay.
I did that.
That's okay.
Oops. Let me fix this. Keep talking. I
Yeah.
got you.
So those who are hesitant, they have their concerns, and we need to, be empathetic towards those concerns, and um, you know, we should, want to listen. And ultimately, when we talk about healthcare for all, that includes all. This that all in the word is very important, and so I think that we should have these conversations and more nuanced conversations. Unfortunately, Twitter doesn't allow for more nuanced conversations like
Right.
that, and a lot of people, they don't necessarily like a lot of nuanced conversation because they're so conditioned to this is the point, this is what it is, and that's it, and either like it or get the f out. And I'm just
Right.
like, can we just have more conversations about this to see the underlying reasons why we believe what we believe? And if we are wrong, then we can grow from that. And if we are correct, then we can also see how we can maneuver through the objections and bad takes so that we can help correct people who don't have the correct information.
Yeah.
Maybe,
I
maybe.
mean, when I talk to people, it really is about poking holes in whatever, you know, propaganda thing that they've sort of fallen for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Specifically around things like healthcare.
yeah, it's true.
Well, one of the things I like to do with I'm sorry, is because I used to work, I worked in the school with these students. And so,
mm-hmm.
like, there's this one fellow that I've talked to a lot because he's the father of this girl who wrestles and plays football with my kids.
Oh,
And
okay.
so, and he's like a MAGA. And so we end up hanging out. I'm like, your friendly neighborhood commie. And they all put up with me. And it's interesting because so he's a veteran and he is like, well, I have health care already and blah, 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 blah. And you don't go with the VAs because you don't point out that socialized medicine because a lot of veterans don't like the VA. So don't go with that. Don't go in that route.
Mm-hmm.
But so I point out, well, I go, you know what? Can we at least agree that healthcare shouldn't be attached to someone's employment? Because when they closed the schools, I was working as a long-term sub. I was teaching his daughter fifth grade science. And when I take, so, you know, if I'm not working, I have Medicaid. People tell me to get a better job. So I get a better job. Being a long-term sub pays better. But what ends
Mm-hmm.
up happening is then I lose my health insurance and my food stamps because I make too much, even though it's a temporary job. You know, and then I said, well, you know what, that February, right before break, I was praying to God that I would not get sick until vacation, because I wanted to be sick over my vacation because I didn't have sick days and I didn't have a doctor to go to. And I have ear problems. And I was like, how am I supposed to get in front of this classroom full of fifth graders with an ear infection, no sick days, and no doctor? And that lands it right in his lap. It's like, bro, I was your teacher. I'm your daughter's favorite staff member. She still comes in my room every day to come and see me. And it's like, here I am, and that's like a personal story. And he's like, oh, well, shit, because if you don't experience it, then you sort of don't know. And what's interesting is he has health insurance through the VA, but he also has, so he says, well, I earned mine. And I go, well, that's okay. And then he goes on to explain. So he has a son who's pretty severely disabled. And so he's like trying to vibe with me about it. And he says, well, I pay monthly extra because for my son's disability. And I go, well, how is that fair? And he's like, because my son is disabled. I go, so why should you have to pay more for health insurance than like I do? Because you have a need and I don't. And I said, you realize what you're doing is paying a disability tax. That's basically what that is. And again, his little behind his eyes, I was like, look, I have socialized medicine too. It's Medicaid. My kids are pretty healthy. They may injure themselves. They get strep throat on occasion, but ultimately speaking, we don't use a whole lot of our healthcare. We just need to have it for when we have ear infections and stuff. His son has severe disabilities. Fine, take mine. Take my share, and when I need it, someone will give it to me. So, but it was really funny. I mean, because we went on and round and round and round, and finally, I was like, you realize that you're paying a disability tax, and he was like, again, like behind his little brain exploding. I'm going to turn them all into communists, I swear. Little at a time. Yeah.
This is why we have conversations. Number one, conversations with people you don't agree with, and that you can move them over to the left. Number one, it humanizes you to them.
Yeah.
Because now you're not just some boogeyman in the shadows. You're their friend or you're their associate in front of them with dreams and aspirations and hopes and love and sorrows. They see you as a human being. And so then you start to give the reasoning. And then you start to go issue for issue. And next thing you know, guess what? You break down that logic. Because let me tell you this. These are the same people that will listen to a Tucker Carlson, that are listening to a Ben Shapiro, that are listening to a Marjorie Taylor Greene. And what do we do constantly on the left? We're always breaking down their arguments. Always. It's easy for us. What makes you think it's not going to be easy with people who we may interact with? And if you do it in a very compassionate and kind way, then number one, you may have shifted them over to the left. Number two, you may have gained a comrade. And I'd rather have a comrade than an enemy. I'd rather change an enemy from a comrade to a comrade than destroy my enemy.
Right.
Because that means I have one more person that has a role in the revolution.
That's right. And what's interesting is that's not so much the experience I have when talking to my liberal neighbors. At caucus, the story I usually use to describe, and it's a true story about my family and 3 different levels or 3 different health insurance situations. So, and I shared this story at caucus for 2020. And I said, so one day my then 4th grader came home with strep throat, and it was really scary because he got a super high fever, and we live pretty far from the hospital, and we weren't sure if we should go now or whatever. But he had Medicaid. So we went to the doctor, they did the swab, we got some medicine. 3 days later, he's fine. At the time, I had union insurance through my job at the school, which means that I have access to healthcare, but I also need to have time off from work. I need to have money for copays, and I need to have money for prescriptions. Now, the thing is at my job, they gave me 100% coverage for free, but I couldn't afford to put my husband on at all. So what happens when my son is fine, but what happens when I get strep throat? I have access to healthcare, but I don't really have healthcare. And what happens when my husband gets strep throat, who has nothing? That's entirely out of pocket. That is one household and 3 different health insurance situations. And this shit lib, she goes, why don't you get the Obamacare? I go, that costs money, right? And she's like, but it's affordable. No, it's not affordable.
It's not
Actually,
affordable for who?
affordable for who? Seriously. I did the math one time even. I said, because when I take that job and when I take the long-term sub positions and I lose my Medicaid, so it says, because I make too much money. So I went and found out, I did an experiment with my kids. It was really funny because I homeschooled them last year. So we did this for an experiment. So I signed up online to get some like quotes about what your insurance would cost me. And of course, for days and days and days, I got emails, text messages, phone calls, because they spam you trying to get you to sign up. But mathematically speaking, so I qualify for Medicaid because of the poverty level, which is incredibly and disingenuously low.
Yes.
That's an entirely different conversation.
Oh, we're going to have that conversation.
Because poverty and poverty law and social services is a passion of mine, and I've worked in social services a long time. But so God, I lost my train of thought there. But so I take the job and I make too much money to get the free stuff. So I try to get the pay stuff, but when I pay for it, that puts me back below the poverty level. So what are we doing here with this? And so I explained, so I'm like, well, it's not, I can't afford it. I work at the school. Like I'm an educator. I don't make any fucking money, and she goes, well, I guess I'm selfish because I already have Medicare. And then she fucking gives me a $10 bill and tells me to take my husband out to lunch.
Wait.
Shit you not. My husband was right there.
Hold on. Wait. Hold up. I just want to talk to her. I just want to talk to her. Are you kidding me?
I couldn't believe it. A $10 bill. Wait. A $10 bill. Let's go out to lunch. What fucking century are you living in? True story.
Wait, so she basically gave you a $10 bill and said, get a cheap meal at Chipotle and split a burrito between you and your husband. That's basically what she just told you.
Yeah. She goes, I guess I'm selfish because I have Medicare.
Wait,
you're damn fucking right. You're selfish.
She said you are selfish?
No, she's selfish. She goes, I guess I'm selfish. I already have Medicare. Because this was now between Biden and Trump. So for the first one was Hillary and Trump. This one, that's who they are. That's the thing. It's really funny because I'm not trying to like make friends with fucking racists and Nazis, okay? But when I'm talking about like talking to the other side and talking to my neighbors, people who from the red team, people who are unsure. Don't you and I both know that the biggest voting bloc in this country is the non-voting bloc. Because we've all sort of given up, you know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, talk to your neighbors, talk to everybody. But what's interesting is I have better luck talking to Republicans and MAGAs, flag waving, wishing they'd been at the Capitol, MAGAs. Then I have better conversations with them than with the shit libs.
I'm thinking about that lady who basically insulted you and try to give you $10. I've been like, do you have $490 for the rest of my deductible?
Yeah, right.
If you really want to help me out, to pay my deductible.
500 is not a deductible. 5,000 is going to be your deductible.
I know. I know. I'm being kind. Yeah. So I'd be like, give me $490 towards my deductible then. Well, I don't have $490. Neither do I. So yes, I want universal health care.
Yeah.
Like, who are you to say that to me?
I couldn't believe it.
Like, hold up. Wait a minute. You blue asshole.
Mm-hmm. They're so stupid. So the thing is, I was clearly a Bernie. So this was still 2020, but I was clearly a Bernie. I said I was Bernie all the way, and I even said, but they let me. They were going to let me be the delegate for Biden. So Biden won my little town, and they voted for me to be their delegate. They're too stupid to realize that the whole point was I was going to go to convention and vote for Bernie policy. I have to vote for Biden, like in the official vote, because that's what the town did. Like, and ultimately speaking, I'm really concerned with the process of voting. Like, I don't care who you vote for, as long as it's on the up and up. I would have had to vote for Biden, but I was going to go, and then I was going to try actually to get to the national convention so that I could really push for the policies that I like. But then the virus happened, and I just didn't show up anyway.
Yeah, damn Rona.
Yeah.
Rona done messed up everything. But
yep.
Yeah, it's just exhausting. How we're so divided, and a lot of times it's, we're vilified so that we don't talk to each other, so that we don't educate. They don't want us to educate people, and I think that's one of the reasons why, like, they will suppress our channels. I know they suppress ours. They suppress the hell out of Franco's channel. And
well, I said I can't even watch you guys when I'm at school. Sometimes at lunch or
you told me
after
about that.
School, I'll sort of try. I think I caught. I was subbing in for someone, so my schedule was different. And my lunchtime, I checked out, and there was I think one of you was live or something. And of course, it's blocked, so I have to from the internet. So I have to use my data to try and watch it.
So you're literally blocked from watching us.
When I'm in the school building, when I'm on the school internet, yes.
Yeah. Wow. Okay.
Which is interesting because you can, it's a school, so we look up lots of political stuff. For social studies and sort of things like that. But for whatever reason, I don't know why it is, but whatever they pegged you for, nope, not allowed.
I guess we're doing something right.
That's right. If you don't have haters, you're not trying hard enough.
Yep, you're right. And I'm sure you got a lot of haters, but guess what? I'm here to say I'm a congratulator, and I'm glad to have you on. We are nearing the end of our time. It went by pretty quickly, actually.
Yeah.
I am pretty happy with how our conversation went, because I think this was absolutely necessary. And okay. I wanted to say this earlier, but I wanted to wait till the end. Even though you're from, and other leftists are from, a more rural areas, I will say that for me, we care deeply about you all, and we see the value in all of you. And we can't do this without you. The expressed appreciation and solidarity that I have for you all is real. And from learning what I've been learning, I'd say that you made me grow 2 more inches in height. And we love you dearly. And I just want you guys to continue to keep strong. You at least have me to root for you. And whenever you want a platform to speak, then you always can turn to me. And I just want to thank you for being with us today.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
Definitely.
Anytime.
Definitely. So, Margo, where can they find you?
So I'm on Twitter at Margo Lee. There I am.
So if you're ever in wanting to have a conversation, or even ask different points that Margo can teach you on, please just look her up.
Yeah, my DMs are open.
Yeah. And so, you know, also, if you can, please, if you guys, feel, that you can like and share this video. If you're not subscribed, then please subscribe. And next time I see you guys on here, Marcia says make a YouTube channel. Yeah, I think you should, by the way.
My husband keeps telling me to do that. I think it's because he's sick of listening to me. He wants me to talk to somebody else.
I think you should. I think it would be great for you to do, because yeah, I think that you have a lot of knowledge to impart, and I think it'd be good because you're unique. You're unique in your situation where you are part of the rural community, but you're also a leftist.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's something that can be a benefit to those of us on the new left. And I damn sure will have you on if you have your channel, and we can cross pollinate in that way too.
Well, now I have to start a channel.
Now you have to start a channel.
Darns it.
Because JV was like, hey, why don't you have your own channel, please? Yeah. But yeah. Oh, and Austin Jones is correct. He said the more people yelling, the better.
Yep.
Yeah. And even Savvy. So now you got me and Savvy. And I know Nick is on board because Nick said you were the GOAT. So come on in, Margo. The water's fine.
All right.
All right. Thanks, everybody, for joining us. And if you guys want to tune in to me, I will be on my channel, the JB Font channel, this Tuesday. I'm actually going to be talking about the link between homelessness, housing insecurity, and health and sickness. So I'm going to be talking about that. I'm going to be talking about my own personal experiences. So if you guys want to tune into that, you guys can go to my channel, the JB Font channel. And yeah, and I'll see you guys. Oh, Case Study QB. What, by the way, shout out to you, bro. I saw you in the chat and I gave you a wink and a nod, but I don't know if you saw it, but I did. I gave you a wink and a nod. There's a second one for you. But yeah. But yeah, I'm drawing this out too much. We're 11 minutes over. I just want to I'm silly like that.
So I'm having too much fun.
Oh, yes, I am having too much fun. And the thing is that I just don't want to let y'all go. All 104 of y'all that are watching right now, I don't want to let you go. But y'all got to go eat. And I love y'all. And I don't want y'all to starve. So, all right. So, good night, everybody. Mwah. Forehead kisses. Mwah.